sit back, relax, and take your foot off the gas, folks. It's time for .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers. I'm your host in New London, Connecticut, Carl Franklin, as always. Flying solo today. Mark Dunn is up to his ears in exams. He's taking certification exams this week, and I caught up with him a little bit earlier last night, a little bit later last night, earlier this morning, about 2 in the morning. And he says blood was dripping from his ears, so he is in no condition to participate in the show today. But anyway, we wish him well. And nothing really exciting happened in .NET land this week, so I guess I'll just go right ahead and introduce my guest. My guest today is Matthew Reynolds. He is an independent software development consultant specializing in .NET. He spends most of his time helping clients around the United Kingdom make the best of this technology. He's also the founder of .NET 247, one of the 15 Microsoft CodeWise community sites, and co-author of a half-dozen .NET books from the erstwhile Rocks Press, including Beginning VB.NET and .NET Enterprise Development from Design to Deployment. Matthew, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm doing pretty good.
Well, you are the first United Kingdom, in fact, I believe the first European guest altogether. We did have a guest from, we had a guest from Peru, but we haven't had any European guests as such. So congratulations.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here.
So how did you find, I got an email from you that, we might hook up. How did you find out about the show and what we were doing over here?
Well, I guess I found the show because I just recently started getting into a lot of the .NET weblogs or blogs that have been going around, and someone had posted a link. And I had actually heard of you before because about 6 months ago I interviewed someone for a position for one of my clients, and he basically used to say that he downloaded your show, burned it on CD, and listened to it in the car on the commute to work. So,
oh, cool.
I kind of knew of you, and then I found you through a link to a blog, and I did the same thing. I downloaded them all, and you also changed it in my car, and I just tried around listening to you for a while.
It seems to be a popular thing to do. Well, I want to talk about your site, .NET 247, first of all, because that's probably that and your books are the way people know you best. But
yeah.
I got to tell you, I stumbled across .NET 247 somehow. I don't remember how, but it didn't seem like it was advertised very much. So, but I always went back there because you have a really good forum index, which was very helpful to me for finding answers to things. Why don't you just give me a little bit of history about .NET 247 and what it is? Let's start with what people can find there on that site.
Yeah, my original vision of the site was, when I first started getting into .NET, like a lot of developers, I had a lot of experience of developing for Win32 and VB and all those, and DNA, those kinds of things. And I found that whenever I wanted to do anything in .NET, I just had no clue how to do it. It would be, I need to open a file, and I'd spend about half an hour trying to work out how to do that. And the original idea behind .NET 24/7 was that, we all know by looking at the framework class library that Microsoft come up with a superb structure. But what I wanted to do was replicate that structure and get to a point where if I wanted to know how system.threading.thread works, I could just find it in the index and get a list of examples about how to use it. That was the original vision for the site. And what happened is I turned the indexing, because originally it was designed to run off MSDN and other websites. And what happened is I turned it on its head and started downloading news groups and web-based message forums and running the spider and the indexing algorithm nodes and linking those into the index. So the site became successful because it just allowed people to say, I need to know how this class works. And voila, you'd be able to just go in there, look at the search engine, or more commonly find it through Google. And then you'd have the message thread just on a single page, just explaining exactly how you do something.
So while you were saying that, I went to the namespaces section on the right-hand side of your page, and I clicked on system.threading, and then I got all the classes and other namespaces underneath that. and I clicked on System Threading Thread, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 article links came up. One from Visual Studio Magazine, looks like 2 from C# Help, 1 from C# Today, 1 from MSDN Magazine, and 1 from C# Corner.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
There's a discussions link on that page you're on, and if you click on that, you can see the threads that the spider has gone out and found on news groups and the developmental email lists and all those sort of things.
Wow.
And and what it tries to do is it looks at the domain of the people doing the posting in the thread, and if it picks up that messages from certain domains from people that the community would normally respect as knowing what they were talking about, it flags those messages as being of high relevance, and it moves those ones to the top. So if someone from Microsoft has applied for a thread in a news group, they get filtered up above the ones on the top because there's more likely to be an answer, frankly, in there.
Right.
So,
one of the most frustrating things I've found when searching news groups is you always find more questions than answers. Yeah. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and there's another thing that it does. It won't index a message unless it's been a reply. So
that's nice.
That happens to me all the time with Google Groups when I'm looking for something. It looks like someone's got the answer to the question, but what they've actually had is exactly the same question as me.
Huh.
It tends to work really well.
That's very good.
It's down to Google because Google does an amazing site and it's an amazing job of indexing stuff on the site, and then we just tap into the Google search engine to bring up the results. And it's pretty good.
Wow, that's very good. I'm very happy that this resource is out there. I've actually used it on a couple of occasions and found it very useful. Are you keeping up with it? Have you had to modify things since version 2003 of Visual Studio and Framework 1.1 came out?
Luckily enough, it kind of looks after itself.
Okay. Sure, because
it has enough in terms. Yeah.
You're just indexing other stuff that's out there, and therefore. Yeah. Okay. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There's certain things in there that will pick up, like it picks up if there's a library that comes out that I want to index on the site, like the Microsoft ADBC and Microsoft Oracle data providers, then we just basically, the spider will just find those assemblies on disk, use reflection to find out what they look like, and then start indexing according to those new assemblies that it knows about. Plus, it will also looks at the names of news groups that it finds. It makes assumptions as to whether ones are going to be .NET centric. So if Microsoft put out some new news groups on some new .NET news groups, then they automatically get spidered in as well.
So you basically wrote the spider, and that's the main heart of this site. That's fantastic. Awesome. How many? What's your traffic like?
Last time I checked, I don't check it that often. It was about 40 to 50,000 unique visitors, unique developers a month, and I think it was about 2 million page impressions a month.
Wow, fantastic! Congratulations.
Yeah.
And I hope you stick around. How is this being funded? I don't know if you remember Carl and Gary's VB homepage. That was mine, but we had a problem because there was no model to pay for it, and it was all based on volunteer efforts. And of course, these things aren't really profitable. You really have to do them because you love to do them. But how is it being paid for?
It's not profitable, but it's not that expensive. I don't need to. There was a time when I needed to spend a lot of time. I could be out earning money as a consultant, maintaining the site, but those days are more or less gone. So I don't have to spend as much time on it as I otherwise would do.
Do your sponsors?
And the host.
I was just going to ask if your sponsors actually cover the bandwidth bills or not.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that's good.
It's not that high bandwidth. It's not like you guys have got 40 meg.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Text is pretty. Yeah, good. So tell me about your consulting business. What's that like? What's consulting like in the UK? And what was it like, and what's it like now?
I couldn't really tell you what it's like in the UK, because although I lived in Arizona for nearly 3 years, but I didn't do any consulting, so I don't know what consulting is like in the States.
No. I meant in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, sure. I guess what happens to me is that a client will find me because they have a particular problem or particular need. Like one of my clients I've done a lot of work for, we just wanted to completely greenfield their entire product line. They do an off-the-shelf facilities management package, and they wanted to greenfield the whole lot and start again. And so they brought me in to help me design that. I've got another client who brought me in to solve some particular problems with some exchange integration with some .NET development they were doing, and they ended up just completely greenfielding another project that I got involved with there as well. So it just tends to be that people find me, I turn up and try and teach them how best to use .NET. And it depends. Sometimes I end up writing a lot of code for them. Other times I don't write quite so much code for them, and I end up doing more architectural or procedural stuff. Like one of my clients, I've just spent nearly 2 months designing a build and deployment arrangement for them for .NET, so I haven't been doing particularly any coding for them at all. It's working out how to have a particularly strange requirement.
Right.
So I've spent a lot of time doing that. It's very varied work. It's very exciting. There's a lot of travelling, which is a bit taxing.
So where do your customers span in terms of their location?
Well, the UK is tiny compared to the States. So, I mean, I've got one client that's about 100 miles round trip, but that gets me most of the way over one side of England. And I've got another client who's about 150 miles round trip, and that gets me most of the way over the other side. So it tends to be that I shuffle between the west and the east of England all the time. Luckily, I live in the middle. So
right. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm also looking on the front page of .NET 24/7, and we have the latest Microsoft knowledge base articles for .NET Framework SDK, including bugs and how-tos. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's good to see that. Sort of some people wake up in the morning and they look at the Wall Street Journal, and other people wake up and they look at the top bugs that have been reported and try to keep on top of them.
I can't take credit for that. I can't take credit for that bit of the page because I'm consuming a web service from a website called mykb.com.
Very cool. What's it called? What's it called, Matthew?
mykb.com.
MyKB.
There should be a little image.
Oh, yeah. mykb.com.
Yeah.
KB Alerts, it says?
KB Alerts, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, KB Alerts, that's exactly what I mean.
Very cool.
So that's a great site as well. And of course, as you can see, they've got a web service and some server control widgets that you can just use to consume feeds from their site. Rather good.
Yeah, new music from the Franklin Brothers. At least that's what we're working on. You can only hear it here. It's a sneak preview of our next album. Anyway, that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about the VB.NET Connections Tour and ASP.NET Connections Tour. Paul Litwin and myself are putting this on. Rob Howard from Microsoft is going to do a keynote. It's 2 days in Washington, D.C., July 31st through August 1st. Paul's doing an ASP.NET-centric track, and I'm doing a VB.NET-centric track. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about is creating and distributing an N-tier application in a day. So we're going to do a real working N-tier application in front of your eyes in a whole day. The next day, I'm going to talk about object-oriented programming, GDI+, exploring the data adapter, asynchronous programming and threading, and auto-deployment. And of course, there's all sorts of great ADO.NET and C# and ASP.NET topics as well. Go to www.devconnections.com/tour for more details. And I hope to see you in Washington, D.C. Now let's get back to our talk with Matthew Reynolds right here on .NET Rocks, where I ask him, what is the VB versus C# thing all about anyway? Don't you go away, folks.
So what is your language of preference these days?
Yes, the language of preference.
You knew I had to ask you that.
Yeah, I know you had to ask me that. I think when .NET originally came out, I'd had a history which had taken me from being a C developer to C++ developer, and then oddly enough to a VB developer, because I was doing a lot of Windows DNA work with VB6 components running inside of ASP. And when I first started getting into .NET, I stuck with the VB route and went to VB.NET. And for a very long time, I was a really strong advocate of the fact that with .NET, the language doesn't actually matter from a technical perspective at all. And that you can generate equivalent code in equivalent amounts of time, whether you choose one language or another.
Performance-wise, basically.
Yeah, performance-wise. Yeah. And, I actually quite like the fact that VB.NET isn't case sensitive. But the reality is this has changed a lot in the past couple of years, because when .NET first came out, everyone knew that C# was where .NET was at. C# was the professional development environment for .NET. All the code samples were in C#. All of the message discussions were in C#. Everyone spoke about the fact that C# was huge and VB.NET wasn't going to be as important. And I've really got to stress that I think VB is a great language, and I really don't think it matters which one you choose from a technical perspective, that I am completely committed to C# now.
Okay. Fair enough.
And I've been committed to C# for a while. I can tell you a little bit about why, if you like.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that. I'm sure everybody else would too.
Yeah. The first problem that we have is I've got one of my big clients has done a lot of coding in Visual Basic in VB.NET, and they're stuck in a situation where they have to use VS.NET 2002. They can't move to 2003. And on large VB.NET projects, the environment just grinds to a halt, because VB.NET has this thing which C# doesn't, which is where it tries to help VB developers by parsing the code, scanning the code, trying to find errors.
Background compiling. It's background compiling, yeah.
Yeah. The bigger your project gets, the more time it spends doing background compiling. And eventually it just grinds to a halt. We've got one solution in this larger project that we're working on, that literally you press return because you want to enter you need to add a new line, and you have to wait 30 seconds for the cursor to come back.
What kind of machines are you running this on?
That would be a P42 gig with a gig of RAM.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a problem that I have because of .NET 24/7 Spider is all written in VB, and I have similar problems with that. So there's that issue. There's technical issues with VS 2002 and large VB.NET projects, which is a shame.
Can you not turn off background compiling in Visual Studio.NET?
We went back and forward with the Microsoft support team in the UK about this, and they eventually admitted it was a bug.
Really?
And
did they fix it in 2003?
I haven't investigated as much in 2003. They said that they were, then they said that they weren't. And I haven't actually, I must admit, I haven't even tried moving over, because these guys they got locked into a problem, and I don't know if anyone else out there in .NET land has had this problem, but it was so difficult to convince my client, it's so difficult for them to convince their customers to install the framework on their boxes that they literally their customers are refusing to install the 1.1 bits on their machine, so they can't actually move to 2003 .NET 1.1.
I haven't come across that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a peculiarity of this one client. I don't really understand it myself, but it's just part of being a consultant. You get given what you get given to work with.
Well, in some sense, Matthew, there's a lot of baggage, that people have associated with problems that we had with older systems, and that people are just afraid to install anything system-wise, when in fact, those are problems of the past.
Yeah.
Well,
I completely think that they are absolutely problems of the past.
They still remember, though.
I don't want to be seen like I'm playing down, not giving .NET a fair go, actually, because I love the technology. I think it's incredible. But there are, you will find that in some larger enterprise organizations, which is where my clients' customers are, they just resist because they've had horrible problems in the past because the older Microsoft technology has behaved in a way that .NET doesn't. It's not a problem to have the 1.0 bits and the 1.1 bits. Yeah. On the machine. So.
Okay. Unfortunate, but you can expect it to one extent, but it's unfortunate because I don't know. We're preaching to the choir here, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we probably are.
We've gone all over that. So what do you think about this, semi-war that's raging in the United States about, moving VB programmers over to C# and telling them that they're going to make more money and all this kind of stuff?
Ooh, yeah, this was fun. I did a keynote at the .NET Exchange conference, which was held at Microsoft headquarters in the UK a couple of weeks ago. And my keynote was, some of the information on that was drawn from the Visual Studio magazine salary survey they did, where they went out and discovered that on average in the US, developers can earn $100,000 a year, or $100,000 a year being a C# developer, and they can only earn $72,000 a year being a VB.NET developer.
How much is that?
Or they can earn $72,000.
72. Okay.
Yeah. It's all on the Visual Studio magazine site.
Oh, right. Well, that's what they said. Yes. Okay. Yeah,
so that's what they said. As part of the survey they did. I thought, wow, that's a bit surprising that there's this $28,000 variance between a VB.NET and a C# developer. And realistically, you have to learn the same to go from where you are for VB or to go from where you are for C#. What was particularly disturbing about this, though, is that VB6 developers earned more or less just about $72,000 a year as well. So you were finding that a VB6 developer that moves to VB.NET actually in the market isn't actually getting any more money. They're not getting rewarded for all this work that they've done, and this new understanding that they have to be an effective VB.NET developer, to be an effective .NET developer.
Okay.
So that's a real shame. That's I tend to.
Yeah. I have another theory about this. My theory is that since most C-based programmers have come through educational systems to learn computer science and programming, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, they tend to have more of an education, whereas VB programmers have basically come from a problem-solving, top-down approach. When they were in such high demand, people who weren't even programmers became programmers in Visual Basic. There are still lots of VB programmers out there that are well educated and that understand VB's limitations, and then they get around that by using C++ or by using third-party tools or tools like Spyworks, and those are the guys I think that this does not apply to. I think that your VB programmer, your average VB I won't say average, I don't know anything about average VB programmers, but there's a whole handful of them out there that came up either through VBA or, or no programming experience right into, there's a lot of them that don't know what a data type is, or, do you know what I'm saying? Or learned how to write a for next loop before they knew what an integer was. And nothing wrong with that. It's just that there are more of those people out there in the market than there are the educated VB and C# programmers. There's less C# programmers, and therefore there's more of a demand for C# programmers. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do completely agree with you. I think my push really is to say it's more or less for people like me, because I am a really good .NET developer, but I was in the VB.NET camp. But the thing is, if you're a good developer and you want to be a professional developer and work on really interesting projects and you are the kind of person who would listen to this show, so someone who's actually really interested in the technology over and above the fact it's not a 9-to-5 job. There's some geek factor in there where this stuff is really cool and you want to use it. I don't think those sorts of people should be sticking with VB. I think they should be moving to C#.
I totally disagree, but my thought is that I believe that Visual Basic programmers that understand .NET and understand the framework can be more productive than C# programmers and more focused on business applications and solving problems than I'm maybe a gross understatement. It's just the way I feel, and probably too. There's something to this, that it depends on who you are, right? If you're the kind of programmer who can easily pick up new languages and new technologies, and you have a resume that has several languages, and it's no skin off your nose to learn another one and get comfortable with it. That's good. Maybe you should go to C#. But if you think in VB, which a lot of people do, and in C# just doesn't work for you, you're going to be more productive in Visual Basic.NET. I suppose it also comes down to your job. I mean, if you're on a VB team and the software is written in VB, guess what? So.
Yeah, one of my clients is a mixed environment now. They had some VB stuff some VB.NET stuff, and now they're doing some C# stuff. So we've got a few developers there who are quite happy switching between the two. Yeah, we've got solutions which have got some VB code in, some C# code in, and some of the projects are all mixing together in different languages, and it's working really well. It's a bit of a pain when you end up flipping to the VB projects and there's larger projects, and the environment starts slowing down, especially because the C# environment just doesn't care at all about how big these projects are. It's only VB that really gets stressed out by it.
Well, I got to say, I use both languages too. I've done some components in C# when I needed to do them in C#. But when I'm building applications, I always start in VB, and if there's something that I need C# for, I'll use it. But that works really well for me.
Yeah, I mean, the way you're approaching this is what I thought is what I really believed in about .NET to start with. It was kind of like, well, I'm really comfortable with VB. I can use this project really I can use this language really efficiently. I know my way around it. I'm really, really comfortable with it. So I can do it in VB, and that's fine, because the code I'm going to get at the end is going to be using all the same framework bits that my buddy who does C# does. I'm going to be able to consume the same web services, talk to the same data sources. My code's going to be of a similar size. It's going to have similar performance.
And I think that's a great benefit for development teams that will now be able to work closer together. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant what they've done. I think the genius of it was putting all this really clever little bits into the framework that they were just equally accessible from everywhere. It was a complete about. Well, it wasn't a complete about face. It was a complete tidying up effort from Microsoft. Because the old technologies, you had things like one language would be geared up to use a certain set of data access components. Another language would be better using another one, and
right.
There wasn't this lovely homogeny that we have now that we have with .NET, which which I mean, it's where all the power is. .NET in and of itself is powerful. I mean, the language you use
is more insignificant.
Is mostly not relevant.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I rail against what I call 90s thinking, which is using one language over another, or a technology, or even a programming technique that will squeeze another nanosecond out of our program. But it's going to take us a week and a half to develop it in this way, whereas we could just use this one statement here and be done with it. And we don't need to fight those battles anymore, largely, if we're using today's hardware. I'm not advocating sloppy code. I'm just saying, what's more important, productivity or nanoseconds?
Yeah. It's what I get pushed about all the time. Is I'm forever suggesting multiple approaches to a problem to a client, and the one they choose is the one that's cheapest, and the one that's cheapest is the one that they can knock out quickest.
Right.
My job is not to trying to take some things which aren't going to cause them serious problems. And more, my job is a consultant's role. I can't take them 5 solutions, one of which they can do in a day, but which will fall over and will lock them in and fall over in 6 months. But they always err on the side of cost. They always want these solutions to be cheap and effective, and that's why .NET is an easy sell into these companies, actually, because
it's
you can go
economic.
To them and say, you can say, look, you can build this solution in less time, and you can build this solution in less time because you've got this incredibly powerful framework that reduces the amount of code you have to write. There's all these small algorithm building blocks.
That's just it. It's not that you can just do it in less time. It's that you can do a better program in less time.
Yeah, sure.
It's good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's also much, much more fun. I mean, it's not necessarily important to my clients, but it's very important to me. And before I got into .NET, I mean, I've been writing computer software since I was a kid. And I've always loved it. And I kind of just got fed up in the end. I just seemed to be continually doing really samey things. I ended up getting out of Win32 development because it was very samey, and I kept having to re-engineer the same kind of linked list classes and all these kind of things.
Debugging is a nightmare.
Moving to ASP and ended up with more or less the same thing. And then you come along to .NET and it's like, oh wow, they've finally given me all this stuff that I can use to, I can bolt together to make these really great implementations. But I no longer have to worry about sorting a dynamic array, because I've got a class there that does it. I've got really great interfaces and other, there's 4,000 classes.
Now the key just becomes finding the class that does the sorting.
Yeah. It's interesting because I wanted to come up with a list of I'm a great believer in the 80-20 rule. And I believe that 20% of the classes in the framework will give you 80% of the functionality you needed.
Amen, brother.
And what I did is I had loads and loads of code on my machine. I got all of the code that I could get hold of, and I used the .NET 24/7 Spider to actually make the top 20% of the classes list that you would actually need to use, and I can't remember the results because it wasn't actually, there isn't this shopping list in .NET. You can't go to a developer and say, there are some classes that they need to understand, but largely there's so many useful classes in the framework. I actually don't think the 80-20 rule applies. I think to really know your way around the framework, you have to play around with all sorts of different bits and pieces. There's classes in there that I don't touch, and there's whole namespaces usually that I won't touch.
Yeah.
But there isn't. You do need to. This is one of the things about .NET is you need to know your way around. But luckily, because they kind of started from scratch, it's logical. So once you know how to use a stream to read a file, you then know how to use a stream to read a download from a website, or you know how to use a memory stream.
I love streams.
Stream data.
I don't know how you feel about streams, but I love streams.
They're brilliant. The stream writers and the streams and just being able to.
Yeah, at first I was going to say, at first I saw all those stream readers and writers and file stream and this stream and that stream, and I thought, what an incredible waste of, a lot of different classes. But the little subtleties in between these readers and writers and stream objects is really brilliant. And you can pinpoint exactly what you need and use it. I love streams.
Yeah. It's amazingly flexible, and all that. I mean, it's just things which were a real problem in .NET. Before .NET, just go away. Like the classic, talking about strings, the one that really springs to mind is needing to store a credit card number in a database. I've got a string object which has got a credit card number in it. Now somehow I need to get that into a byte array for the database. So I'm having to use system encoding to get a load of bytes, write it into a memory stream, then take that memory stream out and use it against a cryptography string, or they probably haven't got this in the right order, but the streams and the readers and writers and the encoding just makes it so easy just to do these kind of manipulations, which was just a nightmare.
Right. Putting these little technologies together to do something great.
So I'm looking around the MSDN website looking for something to talk about here, and something jumps out at me right away. You know how MSDN, their magazine website, they always have a sneak preview of the next issue and with an article that hasn't been published in print yet? Well, they have one for the August issue written by Paul Litwin called Jumpstart Your Website Development with the ASP.NET Starter Kits. And this article is all about these starter kits that are available at www.asp.net, which have been written as plug-and-play websites. And there's one for portals, there's one for communities, there's one for commerce, there's one for reporting, there's a time tracker starter kit, and these are basically ASP.NET websites with source code that you can just download and use. Go to www.asp.net for the starter kits, and absolutely read this article at msdn.microsoft.com/msdnmag. All right, now let's get back to our talk with Matthew Reynolds, where I ask him about his books. And you'll be surprised at the books that this guy has written and the book he is about to write, which I personally can't wait to read. Right here on .NET Rocks. Don't you go away.
Well, let's talk about your books, Matthew. Let's. You say you've written about a half a dozen books for Rocks. What are some of the titles?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say I actually had to go and look them up on Amazon before doing the show. I was very lucky with Rocks because they needed .NET developers, they needed .NET experience and content, and they managed to get me into a position where I had the pre-drop alpha program in Visual Studio 2002 before it was released. So I was getting, the CDs direct from Redmond with the new bits on it before the betas were released. They gave me all these opportunities to write books, and write content for ASP today and C# today. And I wouldn't be the .NET developer I am today if I hadn't had that opportunity. Actually, I'm quite grateful for them. Grateful to them for letting me do that. So, I've done loads of books for them. But Rocks were a classic for this multi-author thing, so I'm on loads of different books. It's like I'm on professional VB.NET, beginning VB.NET, either professional beginning C#, can't quite remember. Did a book with a guy called Carly Watson called .NET Enterprise Development from Design to Deployment, and fought Rocks long and hard to let me do write it in VB and then have it converted to C#. So the same book would be released with different code samples in.
Oh, that's cool.
I was really trying to point out. Yeah, I was really trying to point out that you could build the same solution in VB or C#. I mean, I railed against Rocks for ages, trying to convince them. I kept wondering why they would release a book called ASP.NET Web Services with VB.NET. Like, well, why don't you just release ASP.NET Web Services and do two versions? Have a little flag in the corner that says whether it's C# or VB.
Yeah, we've taken this.
Quite convinced them to do it.
We've taken the same approach at Dev Connections, the conference which I'm involved in. And this next Dev Connections, it's coming up in Palm Springs, in the Visual Studio Connections conference, where everybody is providing demos and source code in both VB and C#. So no matter which speaker you go and see, you're going to see a mix of VB and C#, and you're going to get the demo code in both. That's kind of cool.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, that is good. And it kind of brings home the fact that they are both first-class languages or equal-class languages in the framework.
Yep.
So I've done loads of books for Rocks, and Rocks are no more, unfortunately, which... Can I assume that everyone listening to the show knows about what happened to Rocks?
Yeah, we've talked about it on the show before. The parent company went bankrupt, and I guess Wiley has some titles, and A-Press has some titles. Do you know which company has yours?
Wiley... Oh, good grief. Wiley bought, I think, Veg VB, Pro VB, Beginning VB and Professional VB, and the C# titles and a few others. And A-Press have got all the others. So, yeah.
Okay.
And I can't quite remember what's happening to them at the moment, but they'll be coming back. Some titles that A-Press aren't going to be publishing, so I don't quite know what's happening with those.
You are writing a new book now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about it, actually, because it's a book that I've wanted to write for a long time. I'm just finishing negotiations with the publisher, and I can't really talk about how or who's going to be releasing it. But it's a really interesting book. It's based on my experience of being a .NET consultant over the past couple of years. And the book's in 3 sections. The first section is all about some common design patterns and approaches that work when developing large enterprise distributed .NET applications. So things like engine class collection models, strongly componentized stuff, all that kind of bits and pieces. The second part of the book is all about practically implementing some of those approaches. So it's how we build a data access layer which exposes its data using an engine class collection pattern. How we do no-touch deployment, how we push out the framework onto machines, how we implement a security, how we do all the security so that your code is going to run properly in an enterprise environment.
Wow, that's great.
These kind of things that, yeah, it's going to be a really, really exciting book. I'm really looking forward to writing it. The last part of the book is about, it's designed for software companies that have difficulty with process. So software companies that kind of think, we need to have some form of code review structure, but we're a bit scared of it, or we need to do some UML, but no one here really knows how to use it.
Huh.
The last third of the book is process that shouldn't scare too many people. So it's enough process to be valuable and to kind of edge in the idea of going down a more process-centric route in your software development. It's not the kind of thing that most of you developers, because it's designed, it's not necessarily supposed to be for senior developer level, so it's not supposed to be the kind of processes that you put in place and then all of your peers at the company decide that they'll do it for a week and then just stop. It's supposed to be useful things that kind of will organically lead to better processes in a company. Right?
Huh. That's great. I gotta tell you, I'm really looking forward to reading that. I have a strong emphasis in my classes on practical, not only practical architecture but practical implementation. And it's one of the complaints that I have about a lot of the material that's out there is it's very conceptual and academic, and the examples aren't really applicable. But that's great. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a very, very practical book. It's supposed to be full of practical, useful advice. It's not supposed to be a kind of like a really hard to get your head around academic book. And also, most definitely, is not kind of an artificial example kind of book.
Great.
It's actually quite difficult not writing an artificial example kind of book. You do get very restricted by the format. You've written enough books, and I'm starting to kind of realise that the reason why you end up with very simple examples in books is because of space. it's very hard to kind of say, you know, here's 100,000 lines of code. Now let's look
Sure.
at what
Well,
the smart bits are.
I like concise examples, very, easy to understand examples, but they should also not encourage, and examples come with implications, right? They come with implications that, this is how I should be doing things. And if you don't at least disclaim them and say, this isn't a good example of a best practice of anything, this is a fundamental, example for its own sake, you find that people will take it as a model for how they should write their software.
Yeah.
So do you think this is going to be a large book? How many pages do you expect it to be?
I think it's probably going to be about 600 pages.
Yahoo!
It's pretty big. It's pretty big, but it's not that big. I think the first book I ever wrote, beginning e-commerce, was about that big. And that is quite a comfortable size for me, right, actually. That wasn't too long or too short. So.
What do you think about publishing in general, of technical books? I know that back in the days of VB3, VB4, is when publishers were really beginning to say, hey, this programming book market is pretty awesome. We have to jump in. And since then, there's been a steady stream of more and more and more publishers getting into it. And now, with .NET, maybe a little bit overzealously, there are more titles than there are demand for them. That's what I think. Yeah. And I also think that writing a book these days is something that a lot of people do to put on their resume. Do you know what I'm saying? And not necessarily because they're the right people to write the book. And so, readers of books have gotten more skeptical and have gotten more picky about which books that they read. And I don't know. What do you think about the publishing model in general for technical information?
Oh, yeah, I think you're getting a bit controversial.
Well, that's good, I think.
Yeah, I think that's good as well. I think you're right. Knowing how close I've been to the publishing industry, there is a lot of pressure on publishers to come up with content, and it does get to a point where if you want to write a book, you can pretty much find a publisher who's going to let you do it.
Right.
The market largely decides books which are really worth reading and authors which are really worth reading. So it can be quite difficult to find the kind of content you want that's out there. But that's part of learning about a technology. Learning about software development technology these days is all about the community, and the books are part of that community insofar as books tend to be a very good repository of ideas and examples, and you will find that the community will start talking about a book. There'll be a buzz about a book or certain titles, which will get pushed out into the community, and people will start talking about them. But largely, it's about how the community is what lets people find out about technologies. It lets people get excited about technologies and find answers that people need.
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to read 1,000 pages to find out how to do assembly redirection.
Yes.
When I'm doing
in a config file.
When my assembly is being loaded at runtime. Yeah.
Right.
What I want to do is go like Google and find out. And I think we're coming up because this happens in phases. What has happened with the community at the moment is Microsoft spent a long time very inward-facing doing .NET. And when they started to get to a point where they were alphaing it, they would go to a little bit of a few people and say, can you guys go and build a community around this? We're going to give you these cool tools. We think you're going to like them. If you like them, can you start talking about them? But you can't talk about them to everybody yet because we're still keeping it secret. Then they release a beta and they go out to these people and say, okay, now you can start talking to a few more people. And the community starts building. So authors, like in my situation, I think I was fairly unusual in that I was an author working on .NET who chose to write a website, build a website on .NET that had built the community up. And when I was learning about .NET, it was all about discussion groups. I got all my information from discussion groups on .NET. Can you think about it? If you're trying to write a book, if you're that far ahead of the field, then there aren't going to be any books out there that you can learn from. You have to learn from your peers who are other authors or other very early adopters.
Yes.
What Microsoft are doing now is they've gone very inward-facing again because they're working on .NET, the next version of .NET. So by the time Woodby and Yukon start coming out there and they start talking to people and saying, can you now build a community about this? I'm actually thinking that a really big thing is going to come along is weblogs. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to work yet. I think when people are trying to learn about what .NET Flow and Woodby and Yukon are all about, it's going to be mainly about weblogging and about some discussion groups that are going to be very popular as well, and some community sites will come out of it. And I think the books are largely going to, hopefully they'll end up looking like best practice. There'll be people who have looked at the community, really understand how the technology is working, and then kind of come up with, well, this is the best stuff that I found from the community, and here's my 1,000 pages of how I think you should do this in .NET, based on what the community, the whole thing.
Wow, that's very very cool.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to go.
So you're a big fan of weblogs?
Yeah, I came to this game rather late. I remember years ago, I was in a meeting with someone who kept going on about weblogs and how they were going to be the biggest thing on earth. And I've largely resisted it because I feel that I don't have enough time to maintain a weblog or keep a weblog going. And I recently, perhaps 3 weeks ago, started one at www.asp.net/mreynolds. And there's loads of, not www.asp.net, it's weblogs.asp.net.
Okay.
Reynolds.
We'll provide a link to that.
Of them up there. If you go to weblogs.asp.net, there's hundreds of them up there.
Okay.
And the .NET team have got them as well. So my weblog's up there, and I use a tool called SharpReader, which I'll give you a link for as well, that is an RSS aggregator for aggregate feeds from weblogs. So I get to subscribe to Don Box's weblog and weblogs from people inside Microsoft and people from the community who have got something, who usually have something very interesting to say.
Yeah.
So I'm finding now that I've learned more about .NET in the past month using weblogs than I have in the past 6 months, just using the other tools that are around there. So they are going to be huge. They really are going to be absolutely massive.
I guess weblog. I think weblogs are good for finding aggregate information and to taking the pulse of the community. But there are some really technical issues that you need to find, and you need to find answers when you need them and in the format that you need them. And for that, I don't think the books are really doing it. And I'm thinking that publishing technical information is morphing into a more sort of just-in-time approach to learning. I need to know this. I want to go find that and have somebody explain it to me that knows what they're talking about. So I don't know if you think blogs will fill that need. But I mean your site is a good example of just-in-time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I use it for just-in-time stuff. I'll go into it and click in the search box because I need to know how to do something. And usually it all works on someone else having the problem and having a discussion with someone about how to solve the problem, and you've recorded the discussion. So it's the same thing. It's this just-in-time thing that you're talking about. It's just that rather than you and I having a discussion about how to solve something, what we're doing is we're looking at a transcript of someone else having that same discussion.
Yes.
And that's how message boards are working.
Right.
The listservs and newsfeeds are working.
Assuming that people who have the blogs out there know what they're talking about. I mean, you always have that problem.
Well, that's the power of them, really, because if you're using something like SharpReader or another RSS aggregator, and if you're a .NET developer, you've got to use SharpReader because it's .NET and it's cool. You can, if you're reading someone's feed and they haven't said anything interesting, you just turn them off. You stop listening to them. But the thing is, if someone links to someone and they've got something interesting to say, you add their feed to your what's called a blog roll for a while. And then you listen, they've got something interesting to say, and you keep them on the list, and if they haven't, then you cut them off. So you can build up is just by using it, you can build out these very interesting lists of people who have something relevant to say to you. And if they've got something relevant to say to you, it's usually going to be the kind of problem that you're trying to solve.
Huh.
So if you're lucky enough to have a photographic memory, then you can remember everything that was on there. Otherwise, you have to rely on what I rely on, which is, I'm sure I read something about calling a method in another app domain in someone's blog, so I can go through and just look at the history of entries that I've read and say, okay, there it is.
Very good.
What I would then what I do is add it to my blog so that more or less so I can find it again. Actually, my blog tends to be not things that I necessarily think are interesting to other people. I record what I've used so that I can find it again if I need to remember how to do it.
Huh. Well, that's great.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be huge, especially when all the stuff about the next version of .NET starts coming out and people go back to this thing about not knowing how it works again.
So you did
learning like crazy.
Yeah, you did mention Whidbey. What do you think? I mean, I haven't heard much about it, and even if I did, I probably would be shot for saying anything I know. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I've been a little bit disappointed over this past year because Microsoft, since the retail release of the S 2002, they've been a bit quiet. But I'm not surprised because they're working on cool stuff that they're going to be giving us real soon now. So
right.
I haven't. I'm not in a position to really talk about what I think it would be or what I think of Yukon. Only that they're going to be the next really important thing I need to understand and earn a living out of. So.
Yeah.
And also get to play with loads of really cool stuff. And there's loads of opportunities out there as well.
I do.
As soon as the technology's done.
Yeah, I do know that Microsoft is pretty much committed to having a new version every year. Can you believe that? Once a year,
yeah.
new versions of Visual Studio, new versions of the framework. What do you think about that?
Well, I hope they do, because, we need... The software industry doesn't stop, so we need the tools that Microsoft are going to give us and other people are going to give us. We need new things. We need new ways of doing things. We need them to come up with things like generics and partial classes, stuff which people know. That's public domain on Whidbey, I think. We need these kind of things because they're looking at how people are using .NET and they're saying, we need to give these guys better tools to use. And yeah, great, bring it on. We'll map it up. It's great to keep learning about these technologies, and it's great the fact that these tools keep getting better. So, and anything that's going to make the software development process, coming back to what we were talking about before, anything that makes the software development process cheaper and also produces better code for your money, then excellent. I think that's great news.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody gets into the software development industry to kind of not change with the times, because it doesn't stop changing.
Yeah, I agree. We're also going to have Javal Lowy back for a second show, and he's going to talk about the new generic stuff in C#. Yeah, so he's got a scoop that he's got permission to talk about, so you look for that show.
Well, I'll be tuning in today.
So we're just about out of time. Is there anything else that you want to tell the world, the listening world?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me at the moment, the thing that I don't really understand enough about, and that Microsoft's put a lot of money behind, is tablet PC. So I'm going to be reaching into my back pocket real soon now to buy myself a tablet PC so that I can play with it. The SDK you can download and mess around with, but I think to really understand what impact the technology has to have, you kind of have to try it out. So I would say if you haven't gone out and got yourself a tablet PC or haven't coerced your employer into buying one for you, then it's worth doing just to get an understanding of exactly how software development is going to change to really take on board this new platform and make the most of it. So that's my word of wisdom, I would say.
Yeah, that's a nice pearl. I would also add to the listeners thinking about getting a tablet PC to wait and get one that has a Centrino chip, because those have are I suppose have much better power management.
Right.
Yeah, the Centrino chips. I believe Acer has one now. And of course, by the time people are listening to this, who knows what's out there in the market. But I wouldn't get an old one. Let's put it that way. They tend to be a bit slow.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, man, thank you very much for being a guest. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your site, .NET 24/7. As I said, I use it a lot, and I'm really looking forward to that book. You have a prospective title for the book?
Yeah, the working title is The Consultant's Field Guide to Microsoft.NET.
Nice. You're going to have pictures of birds and stuff and drawings by Roger Torrey Peterson? Or
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to have. Pictures of pocket PCs and tablet
right.
PCs.
This is the red-bellied manager.
Yeah.
Clinging to a tree, whacking his head against it. All right, well, on behalf of myself and Mark, I know Mark is out there listening, and thanks a lot to you and for spending this time with us. And come back again.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
All right, Matthew. Take care now.
See you later.
Bye.